Hey, Julia.
Hey, Moise.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have you here in the studio.
So excited to be here. It's a cool
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. I gave you the blue pop filter for a reason.
Oh, why?
We're going to find out.
Oh,
We're gonna find
I know
out.
why, actually.
Want to welcome y'all to In Conversation, where creatives talk. This is a special episode. So if you haven't seen season 2 or season 1, go back, play that. But we had to do a special episode for my friend, artist, musician, songwriter, so many titles, we could just keep going. But Julia, yeah. I already said your name already, but Julia for the third time. If you didn't already get that.
It's me.
Creeping Charlie.
I'm so happy to be here. This is so fun. I love chatting.
You love chatting.
I love chatting, and I'm excited to do that. So, yeah.
Well, let's start this conversation off by understanding what came first. Instead of the chicken or the egg, the songwriting or love for guitar?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It's hard to say exactly what. I think I grown up around music because my dad plays music. And when I was really little, I would, do music with him. And I wrote a song called Party with My Friends, which is the craziest little, it's so funny, but it comes up at every family event. So I guess in that way, that was songwriting. And then when I was in middle school, I was playing more guitar and I would do more covers with my band called the Blue Swamp Donkeys, which was from it sounds like some weird propaganda against Democrats, but it was born out of name a color, biome, and animal, and somehow we ended up with Blue Swamp Donkeys. But that was mostly covers. And I think what got me really into it, I think the songwriting aspect is kind of what solidified it, because I took a break from it, not intentionally, it just wasn't really speaking to me. And then when I really had something to say and I was writing a lot of poetry, that's when I really felt the need to pick up the guitar and make it into songs and kind of package it in a way that felt right. So I would say the songwriting aspect is so important to me. And that's still how I write songs a lot today. I don't necessarily have a set process. I think a lot of people have a very specific rhythm and ritual to it. But I find myself that a lot of the time my approach to it is just getting mantras stuck in my head or writing stuff in my notes app, a classic, and then it finds its way into a song. So the songwriting is really important to me, and I like to tell stories with it and kind of capture an energy. A lot of my favorite songs are just something that feels like a moment that's captured and an energy to it. And I think that comes from the songwriting and performance.
You mentioned poetry, and now that you say that, I can connect the dots between your songwriting and a love for poetry. Is poetry kind of the medium that you kind of grasp towards? Did you read a lot of poetry growing up? Did you watch any movies or TV shows?
Yeah,
Did that and also inspire your songwriting too?
Yeah, I think so. I think Tumblr in 2014. Of course. I was reading that, call that what you will, maybe poetry generously. I was reading that, and I was also cooking on that. I was typing up my little sad thoughts. But yeah, I've always really loved Sylvia Plath. That's someone who's a huge inspiration for me. And she does long format novels and poetry, but even in the way she writes her novels, there's these little almost passages. And I think that's really inspired my songwriting. I think the aesthetics of certain films and books will inspire more than maybe the plot. And that's kind of with a lot of the 90s sound. That's kind of where that comes from, just this whole grunge idea and mostly just this idea of being a little bit grungy and figuring your shit out and kind of this nostalgia and also pre-nostalgia, but also a nostalgia for something that maybe I didn't even experience. So yeah, that's kind of, I'd say there's definitely some like aesthetic influences there.
The 90s grunge and indie rock era had a really big influence for me between like 2017 to 2019, I would say. So in college, I had this class called the History of American Music. So we went through the whole timeline like from like the blues to gospel to then jazz. Rock. Yep, yeah. Jazz and then rock. And just seeing how it all, like, each one just kind of flowed into the other. And then once we got to like the 90s era, and obviously we talked about the Nirvanas, the Mozzie Stars, and that whole time period, like, my Spotify that year, my Spotify Wrapped. I don't even know if they had Spotify Wrapped in like 2017. Maybe they did, but like if you looked at it, I was like, I was going through something. But it was just the infectious feeling, and I would like watch concert videos from that time too.
Oh my god, there's something about him, and like that fried video quality.
Yeah. And just like them jumping on these big speakers, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I digress. A lot of that era, and you already said, like, you weren't here to experience it, and like I wasn't even here to experience it too. I was like so young. But it's kind of wild how something that we weren't necessarily there for can yet influence who we are now.
Totally. I think there's something to say with like the parents, and like, because my parents are like Gen X. I don't know what your parents are. Is that
boomers?
Boomers. Okay. Yeah. Boomers, Gen X. I feel like and it's so interesting how just all cultural whatever is like, it's all a call and response to itself. And I was just like watching this thing about how even with like fashion, how brands will have mechanisms built in that they know their product is going to go out of style so intensely for like every 2 years, because the more in trend something is, like when it's in trend, the harder it's trending, the more out of trend it is in like 2 years. So they have like systems built in where they like technically go bankrupt because they're so used to like, there is this turnover and it's so weirdly predictable. And I think like something about when our parents were young and when we were like being born, there's almost this like subconscious, like, I don't know, call back to that. And I lived in Seattle, when I was like 6 until I was 6. And so my parents.
I love Seattle.
Oh, I know. I love that place so much. It's so like, I wish it was sunny though. That's my only qualm. But I do love the rain too. That's why it's so moody. That's why they make all the best music and also a lot of serial killers. They're all from Wisconsin or like Washington.
Yeah. Something in the water.
Something in the water. Good music and serial killers. That's perfect. Yeah, I think that's like interesting with the parents though, like, because I feel like that's like when I was a baby, it was like Nirvana, Pearl Jam. We're listening to Built to Spill. They're from Idaho, but like, Soundgarden, just this like very specific sound. I like to say like guitar driven and honest lyrics, and that's what I like to kind of base my stuff off of. But yeah, I love all things 90s, and honestly, coupled with like Obama era indie pop, I think is like, we're never going back to the level of like Strokes, Group Love, just like that random like 2008, 2012, like
Arcade Monkey.
Yeah. All of that, like, it was just a weird little pocket of popular music being really alternative. Like, I don't know. I just thought that was really cool. And I feel like there's some influences there for me too. But yeah, are you a fan of Obama era indie pop? I'm going to like start this term.
You know what? Like, I'd never heard of that term before. You just coined it right now, and that's so far. I feel like I got more into indie. I think I missed that. I think so. I got super into like to grunge and 90s era, and then I kind of got up to speed with like the indie of that time. So like early like bedroom pop.
Yeah.
That was when I kind of transitioned to like really not only liking that stuff, but like making that stuff too.
Yeah.
Mac DeMarco.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Of course.
So I
He's
like,
so lovable.
I have a lot of friends, who are in rock bands and stuff, and they bring up like Vampire Weekend. They bring up Fall Out
Vampire
Boy.
Weekend
Like,
is such a good example.
they bring up all those bands from the Obama pop era. And I'm just kind of missing out. I'll just like listen to rap or an R&B then. But I feel like I missed it.
You're
but
finding
it's never
it now.
too late.
It's never like we're listening to 90s music now. Like,
Exactly. It's never too late.
never too late.
I didn't know that you spent time in Seattle. All I knew was you're gonna have to. From my understanding, you grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah, I would say I always tell people like I'm effectively born and raised here, even though I'm not. But I've been here since I was like 7.
Okay.
My family was out in Seattle for a really long time, and my mom's from the Midwest. My dad grew up like all around the West Coast, kind of. But yeah, my sister and I were both born in Seattle, and I think that's why like I romanticize that so much. And like Sub Pop, I love that whole label. Like, they're so cool.
I think they're still doing the thing.
Oh, they're still doing the thing.
Yeah.
I like Tony Kuehl, if you're seeing this. Yeah, I love that so much. So I was only really there till I was like 7, and my parents were so. I mean, honestly, I feel like Seattle in the 90s is similar to Minneapolis now. Like, everyone's in a fucking band or like making music, and my dad would say that like at parties it wouldn't be like, are you in a band? It's like, what band are you in? Or like, what's your project called? Like, the assumption is that like, someone's doing it, and everyone like, is 2 degrees of separation away from Kurt Cobain. And so it's cool that they were like part of that scene. And my dad had like played with some bands out there that I'm blanking on the names, but I want to say like Screaming Trees, like someone in that had played with my, everyone's all connected.
I guess that is very similar to the Minneapolis scene right now. Yeah, everyone is like has the same drummer.
If there was a web, that just.
Yep. The guitarist is in like 3 different bands. Yeah.
Those pesky drummers.
Yeah.
They're in like 8 of them.
We need them though. We need them. Not enough of them, clearly.
Yeah, if you want to start drumming, whoever is, if you're listening to this, the girl who's listening to this, if you want to start drumming.
Do it.
Yeah, that's so funny. I always like have been calling drummers band whores because I'm like, you're in so many bands. It's like my drummer is in a couple. My friend Harry who drums is in a couple. Like Megan and Joey.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys run the fucking scene.
They do.
Like,
they do.
that's amazing. And the fact that they're a couple too, I'm like, oh my God.
If Meg and Joey disappeared from the earth, Minneapolis music
the backbone
would go back
out.
to where it was, and it wasn't hot.
As good.
Yeah, it wasn't as good. Okay, and then you went to school in California, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I went to Occidental in LA. It's so tiny. Speaking of Obama era indie pop, he went there for 2 years, and they don't let you forget it. He didn't even graduate from there. Like,
what?
Yeah.
Wait, I thought he went to Harvard or something.
He went to Columbia. I know this. Like, I wish I didn't know this so well because they like, it's every 10 feet. It's 2,000 kids. It's like a tiny school. Okay. And there's like, those pictures of him where he's like got that maybe like short brim hat on and he's like smoking something.
Yep.
And he's all cute.
Iconic.
Yes, so iconic. That was in one of the dorms at Occidental, and they literally have the photos on the dorm. Like,
what a
it's legend. Like you walk up.
Whoa.
I know he kind of slayed those pictures. He looks so good. But yeah, fun fact that if you Google Occidental College, it's like the first thing that comes up. They're like, Obama went here.
Yeah.
He didn't graduate, but we got him for 2 years.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that was a cool time though. It got so interrupted by COVID, obviously, because I think by the time I graduated, I was only there for 4 semesters out of 8. Because I had 3 gone from COVID, and then I spent a semester in New York at the United Nations. Okay. And so, like, in person, I was there for 4 semesters.
Such a bummer.
I know. It's so sad because I loved it. And, like, LA is so, especially, like, Northeast LA. I don't know. Have you spent a lot of time in LA?
Yeah, I would say mostly East and Central, and then
Yeah.
like West Hollywood, if you want to consider that
Yeah,
LA.
yeah,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
that-
yeah.
yeah,
But
like
I don't think so much in like Northeast area. No.
Yeah, it's so cute. Like if you've been to like Silver Lake or Echo Park.
Echo Park, yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
like love those neighborhoods. It's honestly like a little bit Minneapolis-y.
Yeah.
Minneapolis, maybe like a Brooklyn,
Yeah.
a little spaced out, and everyone's like a little better looking.
For sure.
That's kind of the vibe. But yeah, I liked that a lot, and I think there's definitely some influence there, and just like I feel like there's different. If you're writing like a sad song, there's like Midwest sadness, which is like Bon Iver, and then there's like Southern California sad, which is like you can't be sad in the same way because it's just like really warm. It's like the tones of your sadness are like a sunset rather than like a frozen patch of dirt.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like a
tundra.
Lana Del Rey, you
Yeah,
know, like a
yeah,
Lana
yeah.
Del Rey sad.
Del Rey, yeah.
So I feel like there's some like subconscious stuff there. Yeah, and also just like having, I think that kind of amped up my guitar skills too, because I would be with an acoustic guitar and I'd be by myself in the dorm, and I'd have to like really be intentional with my time, like between like classes, and just you're always seeing everyone and there's not a lot of alone time. So I think like that really made me like hone in on the technical guitar stuff. So yeah, LA is great.
Yeah. It's too bad that like that time period got maybe cut short.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about what might have been different if it
If no
hadn't gone
COVID?
that way?
Yeah, I do.
Like, do you think like your band, like, because did you have the Creeping Charlie band going when you were in school already? Or was it kind of forming in a way?
It started
Yeah.
when I was like, sophomore year of college. I had like written this batch of songs, and then I came back for winter break, and we went into the studio, me and my sister, Esme, who plays bass, and Jack, who plays drums, and we just like went in for a couple hours every day for a week and like busted them out. And then we released those in May under Creeping Charlie. So yeah, I was kind of starting, and that's another like angle with that I think is really interesting when I talk about Creeping Charlie being around for now 4 years. Of those 4 years, like I've been in school for like 18 months. So like and Esme's been gone too, or I was in LA, or I was in New York, or it was COVID. And like collectively, the amount of times we've been able to really play have only been over the summer or over Esme's winter break. So pinched together, it's probably like 2 years of actually, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. And I do think that COVID, for me, I feel like it was obviously such a horrible thing for so many reasons. I don't want to be like, it's great for me. But I do think it, and I don't know if you feel this way too, but I almost felt like it was like my values were like put through a sifter, and kind of I was left with these rocks that like of what actually mattered to me. And I hadn't I never would like, I went to school for international relations. I was like full speed ahead wanting to be like a diplomat, and I'm still right now I'm really into like anti-proliferation, and on my guitar it says weapon of mass construction instead of destruction. But I'm just really like, yeah, sidebar, but I'm really into like just anti-nuclear war. I think it's like the most colossally stupid thing that humans can do, and so preventable. But I was like full steam ahead wanting to do that, and then it was almost like, I just went through this sifter, and it was like, wait a minute, that's like, I want to do something so different, and I still want to do that too, and I like love that. But it was a newfound importance, like how much I needed music, and I needed songwriting, and I needed a community that like enables that. And
And there's another route to maybe get to being that diplomat, or you know, having that influence to project that thought. And
totally.
but music is like the calling that's
Yeah.
in you right now, and
Oh,
you're finding
yeah.
a way to channel that energy through your guitar, through your voice. But yeah, I would really like how you put that time period as, you know, putting all the sand and the pebbles and the rocks through a sifter, because during that time you had a lot of time at your hand, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I just dialed in and like focused on the We Survived the Storm album and like making that thing. You know, music was what called me in that moment. And I was like, there's probably not going to be another opportunity to be this focused.
Yeah. And when did Raspberry Tea? Is it Raspberry Tea?
Raspberry Tea.
Yeah. When did that come out? That was like more recently though.
That was last year, but as you know,
Probably
how the process goes
starts 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think that one, the first demo of it was like 2021. So yeah, during
just
that
coming
time.
out of that.
Yeah.
So crazy.
So crazy. You talked about playing your guitar in your dorm room, and fast forward to today, you just like did a whole tour.
Yeah.
Your first tour.
Yeah, that was our first.
Congratulations.
Real tour.
Congratulations. You know, leveling up from playing only during winter breaks and summers.
Exactly.
Yo, dude, like that shift of like, you know, you at one point were making stuff in your bedroom, in your dorm room, just playing, and as you said, like getting your technique up, and like now all that work is like coming to fruition and now has time to shine. Have you reflected on that? Like, has that hit you yet?
Yeah, it has like a little. It's such a good question. It's so interesting because it's almost like it's like I've had to work so hard to plan. Like I planned the whole tour and booked it all, which I like.
It's not easy, yo. It's not easy. That's a. I forgot to add. She's also a booking agent.
Yeah, surprise. Now I'm a booking agent. But I like. This is a little bit of a sidebar. But I went to Europe with my family this summer, and we went on this hike called the Tour de Mont Blanc, which is the super cool circuit. It's like France, Italy, Switzerland, 100 miles. We just did different bits and pieces. We had done the whole thing, like its entirety, a couple years ago, or God, like probably like 8 years ago now. But we went back with some family friends, and it was one of the days we were going over this mountain pass, and it was super, super rough up at the top. It's very dense mountains. And then we finally got to this part that was a little bit paved, but it's still like you had just summited, so you're going into this valley, so it's pretty steep. And I'm walking with my mom, and I get hit by a mountain bike.
Oh.
Going like probably like 30 miles an hour because it's fully like downhill. And this little Italian douchebag, I was like, what? He was like 17, like doing wheelies and stuff. And he fully ran me over. Like, it was so insane. And I'm grateful that I had like my backpack on because there were tread marks on my backpack. Like he literally ran me over. That could have been the end. Like,
no.
Like I was thinking about if I would have had my hair down and it like got like caught up. Like it was so insane. But I'm all fine now. I think I probably had like a concussion, but I just was so stunned because like even if you fall, it's like your brain has a second to know you're falling. But when you're just walking and suddenly you're flattened from like there's not like that even like millisecond to be aware that you're falling. And I'm so glad it was me who got hit, not my mom, because like I got all like I've got a little more padding and I like got all bruised here. But anyway, I had to be airlifted. It was the most insane. Like they brought in this helicopter and they couldn't land it because it was like so densely wooded.
Oh, so wait, did they have to use like
the
a little
rope.
crane? You have the rope. Yep, okay.
And what like I didn't realize about, and I'm so freaked out about that stuff. Like I have not gone on zip lines. Like I'm such a baby about that. If I was even remotely like lucid, because I was so like out of it, I would have never let them strap me into that thing. But I was just kind of like, wee. And what they like don't tell you about being airlifted, like this is like such a 1 in a million experience to get fucking airlifted. But if you're like on the mountain and the the helicopter's right here.
Yeah.
Then like when they're sucking you up and they go off, you're like suddenly in this valley. So instead of like 50 feet underneath you, it's like 5,000 feet underneath you because the mountain stopped.
Yeah, for sure.
All that to say, I had to sit out a lot of that hike after that because I was like all, I had like little.
What do you mean sit out? A hike is done. Hike is done. Fini.
When you get airlifted, it's
Yeah,
over.
Yeah, so I had to sit out a little bit. Yeah, what?
So I like everyone in my family is like doing, and they were so accommodating, but they were doing all these day hikes. So like we'd like stay in one spot and then they'd go for a loop and come back, as opposed to like hiking to the next spot, staying there with all your stuff. And so I was like alone with my laptop. I booked like half that tour in like 4 days because I was like so just like, brrr. I probably shouldn't have been on a laptop because I had a concussion, but I did a lot of that tour in Europe.
I'm so mind blown right now. You're telling me you were a half concussed, maybe full concussed, trying to book a whole tour. Like, how's that even your first thought?
I was so bored. I like, oh my God. I was like, if I can't hike, I'm going to be emailing. I'm always emailing. But yeah, booked that tour.
Whoa.
And the tour went great. Tour was great.
Yeah. Okay. So that was this past summer.
Yeah.
And then the tour was
December.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was like 2.5 weeks. First time ever doing something like that. We've done Midwest runs. Yeah, it was great. I think next time I'll have someone else plan it.
For sure.
And we had an awesome tour manager, one of my friends, Eliza, who like, she lives out in LA and she works in accounting and formerly worked in law for this firm that does like the Grammys and Oscars. And she's very in with like the entertainment.
Great skill set for
seriously. You got law and accounting. Like shout out Eliza. She killed that shit. Yeah, the tour was really fun and it made me tired in ways I didn't know I could be tired. Mm-hmm. And it also made me like at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, it's over. But I could also go like 2 more months.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like addicting.
Yeah.
Have you ever done any touring?
I have. It's actually been a while since I did a formal tour. Yeah. But thankfully I have a manager who I've been working with for the past 3-4 years. Her name is Carlotta. Shout out Carlotta. And she helped book a lot of it because she, at that time had relationships with a lot of these venues. So we did like the Elba Room in Chicago. We did pianos in New York. And I don't know if you remember or know of So Far Sounds.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a pretty good relationship with them too. So then wherever we had a show, we also had like a So Far Sound show too. So yeah, it was pretty fun. Like, I've definitely like looking back on it, like when I listened to how it sounded, like I was not there yet.
I'm sure
it's cute though. It's cute. Like, I was doing the thing, right? But
I know that feeling so well.
It's cool to just see how far I've come since then. But yeah, I'm itching to definitely do another formal one at this like version of me.
Right, when you're more ready.
I respect the grind and the hustle. Like I didn't have my manager with me because she's not based in the US. So like it'd be either me solo or it'd be I was lucky enough for the Denver shows. It was me in the band, but it was just like a lot of bootstrap. Just we're pulling up, we got our gear,
load in, play the show,
play the show. Meet some people. But it really does help shape also like the music that came to follow that. I took away so much because I was like, oh man, this isn't hitting like how I want it to.
Right.
In terms of like, the songs
like
that
live versions versus recording or
just like understanding like what translates to a show setting.
Yep. Yeah.
Like what gets people like jumping up.
It's never what you think.
Yeah, it's never what you think, but you kind of like get a sense for it.
The more you do it.
Yeah. And like even like the transitions, right? Like the structures of songs. Like I didn't even have like a formula for how I was writing songs. Like I didn't follow like a verse, chorus, verse. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Okay, yeah.
Because once I started playing live, it was hard for me to remember the structure of the songs.
Yeah,
because I wasn't
don't have any verse, chorus. Like
exactly.
God.
So I was like, oh, that's why there's this verse chorus thing, and it just changed my songwriting forever. Yeah.
That's cool.
So there's definitely a lot to gain from just
Oh my God. Yeah, you just
hitting it hard like
see
that.
more and more people reacting to it. It's like what lands and like, yeah, that's such a something that like I didn't really realize I do in my songwriting, but Chris Reimenschneider, the one who wrote the Star Tribune article about us, said, what did he call? He used like, it's like this fuzzy rock or like loud, quiet, loud brand of indie rock, which I thought was interesting. So like, and I do kind of do this where I like write some like a quiet and then a loud and then a quiet and then a loud. And I think it has a cool grip on the audience. Cause I know like, I was like, I never really thought about it like that until I heard him like say it like that. Cause I realized when I go to shows where sometimes like, if it's like all loud and like, I like loud music, but if all the songs are like blaring guitar, like shredding, like I don't care. Yeah. I don't want to be shredded at for like 3 hours. Like tell me a story, like have like, you know, get quiet, get loud, like, or even like, I love when songs don't have like a structure too, like, cause it just keeps you like on your toes. But something about like having the dynamics, that's the word I'm looking for, like is so cool, and learning how like that goes live. So fun. The dynamics.
Okay, now you did this tour, you did the thing, and now you're about to release an album.
Yes.
I'm really bad at pronouncing things. Like I just make up my own pronunciation.
Yeah.
But I think it's pronounced Cyanotype.
Cyanotype. Yeah.
Say it.
Cyanotype.
Cyanotype.
Yes.
Which the definition is literally like dark blue.
Yeah.
Like an image that's dark blue.
Mm-hmm.
Not only congratulations on
you.
that. And you know it's almost here. Or it's here,
coming.
Or it's almost here. You know it's coming.
It's coming.
Let's talk about the process of making this body of work.
Yeah. It's been such a process.
We can even dive into the songs, but
yeah,
let's just start with like let's start with like the name and how you came
sure
to building up to that.
Yeah. So I named it after the fact, and it was this really kind of cool full circle moment. And I think a lot of things when they feel right are just like, of like, why wouldn't it be that? Of course it would be called Cyanotype. When I said that, I was like, oh, it should be called Cyanotype. The very first Creeping Charlie shirts I ever made. So Cyanotype is like, you take a negative of an image and then you put it on the blue, and then the light like burns it in. So it's kind of like this old fashioned like photography, I guess. And so the very first Creeping Charlie shirts I made were so labor intensive because I took like Creeping Charlie from the backyard, this weed, and then I would lay it on Cyanotype and put glass on top of it. And then it would, you know, produce that negative, and then you wash it and let it dry. And then I would sew that onto a t-shirt, which is...
Julia is also a shirt manufacturer.
I'm into apparel.
You're into apparel. Yes.
Want to do it all. So that was the first like shirt I had ever made. And I just thought like that method, because it happens, or people do it a lot with plants. And I was thinking it was kind of appropriate with Creeping Charlie. And then as I was writing these songs, I always think of it as the final track because we usually play it last, but there's a song called Picture Diver, and it's kind of all about nostalgia, and the chorus is, I crave that euphoric sad, which is how I feel is the definition of nostalgia. Like it's this really happy, but like melancholy at the same time. Anyway, in that song, there's a phrase, I'll miss it when I see the pictures. And I really feel like this whole album was just a way for me to capture a moment in time. And in turn, cyanotypes are also a non-photography way to capture a moment in time. And I like to think about how, I think it's a Basquiat quote, and people who know me know I say this all the time, but that music decorates space and art it's art decorates space and music decorates time. And I feel like that's just such an interesting way of thinking about like decorating each dimension. And I felt like Cyanotype was like a decorative element of space, but that also like wasn't an exact, because a song isn't like just an exact recording of like what's going on in your life. It's like processed through you and then recorded. And I felt like the Cyanotype was also processed through this kind of deep blue filter. And I think there's like this kind of blueness to the album and like this sadness, but also like joy and kind of skepticism, I think, are like some threads on that album. And I felt like just an image that's obscured and a little bit tinted blue is like a great way to kind of describe how a lot of these songs were like filtered from me into their final product. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love how deeply thought it was. It wasn't just like, actually, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna bash. But actually, no, I will say it. Sometimes people just, they just throw a name out there for the title of the album, and that's what it is, right? They're like a lyric from one of the songs. But I always enjoy kind of coupling the music, because you said art describes space.
Yeah, decorates space.
Art decorates space. So it almost sounds like you were thinking, when you close your eyes and you listen to it, and maybe you had it all complete, and you're trying to think of how do I sum this all up?
Yeah.
It was that visual was speaking towards you.
Yeah, totally.
So like if you were to do an exhibit and the song was going on, what would that room feel like? And
my God.
when people ask me, how do you approach like an album, and how do you like kind of put it out there? How do you kind of package it all? I think a important step is like, once you have it all done, like just close your eyes, listen to it, and like, what do you see? Because that should be reflected in like not only the cover art and the title, but like the music videos and all that, because it's so important to connect all those dots for the listener.
Oh my God, yeah.
And they appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm at least a fan who appreciates that. So I'm already picturing like the vinyl and like the t-shirts that will come with it. When I did have the chance, because I've had the chance to listen to the album, the dark blue motif speaks not only lyrically, but also like in your voice. You have this breathiness. Reminds me of like Jewel.
Jewel.
Jewel. Do you know Jewel?
Yes.
Yeah.
My parents. Yeah, I like. Yeah.
And even how you kind of have like a rap flow in your verse.
Thank you.
You have a rap flow. Yeah. And it's refreshing. It's just unique. It's in your own way. And then like the guitar tones too. I think that's like a staple and something you probably are very particular about.
Oh yeah.
How'd you get those good? Like, you don't have to give us all the sauce, but like, let's talk about the instrumentation, because it was a band effort.
Yeah, for sure. This whole album was so fun to make and so interesting. And it's really funny that you say, like, when you close your eyes, you should like feel it kind of come together and see like if that's the right name. And I'd been thinking about the name for a long time, and then when I like finally had it sequenced, because our producer John, he like did such a phenomenal job sequencing the record, and like I'm always pushing back. Like if someone's presenting me with something, I'm like, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way?
Oh, Julia, how many mixes did you have?
Oh my God.
How many different versions did you put? John?
Yeah,
how many?
I put him through so much. He was like, we're doing 3 mixes. It was like Capricorn Test Mix 10. And for like 10 songs, it was so tough.
I love it though. Yeah.
The second he came up with the sequence though, no edits. I was like, this is the perfect sequence. And I listened to it in that order and I was like, this is motherfucking Cyanotype. Like this makes sense. So yeah, that sequencing worked out perfectly. And I felt like that was what like really nailed the name in for me. I was like, now it feels like this. But the instrumentation was so fun. We recorded at Electrical Audio in Chicago, which is Steve Albini, who was engineering a lot of Nirvana stuff. Yes. He owns that studio. So that was kind of I think he did In Utero. in utero, and I think beyond, but never mind. All-timer. Yeah, so he runs a studio in Chicago called Electrical Audio, and like I always want to like reach out to kind of my dream like scenario, just of people whose art I've really liked. And that's how I found John too. It was like I was listening to all this music that I was like, something about it just has that something that I don't know what it is, but that something. And it was like John and Yellow.
Yeah,
and then
so
I found
you really
John.
appreciate the credits. You'll be looking at the
Yeah,
credits.
I look at the credits. I'm in there like hitting expand on the Instagram caption to see the credits.
I did a little research. He did like Sonic Youth.
Yes,
stuff.
I love Sonic Youth.
Okay.
He also did Always, with 2 V's.
Yes, I know
Marry
that.
Me, Archie. Yeah. Just that epic like
nice.
vocal whatever reverb that's on that. That's so iconic.
Okay.
Yeah, he's so cool. He's done all of Dinosaur Jr., who I also really like. But we recorded there, and it was the first time. So on everything, Harry Miles played guitar on most of the songs. Esme played bass on everything. Jack played drums. It was the first time that I hadn't played all of the guitar. Like everything that's out right now is only me on guitar. Except for Capricorn. But so that was cool to have that, and we recorded live, which I really like doing. So yeah, it's just it really jives, and like a lot of the like overdubs we do after the fact and vocals we do after the fact. I learned the hard way to not save all the vocals to the end, because we recorded the whole tracks, like all 10 tracks, and then in the last 2 days I was just singing for like the last 2 days straight.
Did you already have
So
demos
crazy.
though of
Yeah.
vocal performance?
I had like scratch tracks from when we would, because there'd be like Jack's, basically the big live takes are to get drums 100%, bass most of the way, because we just do DI and then you can like beef it up later. And then guitar, I think we ended up keeping some of the scratch guitar tracks, or a lot of them actually, because we were just mic'd up and through all these like awesome, really vintage amps. And yeah, it was just so fun. Like it really, really hones you in on what you sound like. I mean, I'm sure you know this, just like performing is so much different than recording. There's this like mathematic element to recording. And it was so fun to like be in that room with everyone and just really lock in. I was so nervous when we got there the first day. I was restringing my guitar and I broke 4 strings. I was like, oh my God.
What?
I was winding those so tight.
Yeah, okay. You're doing too much.
I was doing entire, like, I don't even know what I was, like, I've done that so many times. And suddenly I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. But it was really cool to track that all live. And yeah, I ended up putting more and more layers of guitar. That keeps happening to me where I'll like record it and then I'm like, just one more layer. And suddenly there's like, I always like stack on. I think something that kind of characterizes this album actually is that there's random little stacks of like 2 or 3 note riffs. And I'll kind of layer those on and like a chorus. I'm like, what does it need to have here? It needs like a da 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 da. It's always something like that.
Yeah.
And just a lot of like big guitar tones. We were going through these massive amps, and on this one, on Paper Doll, that was my favorite guitar tone to get because it's just so nasty. It's like the dirtiest, like,
And it opens up the record too.
yeah,
Paper
it's the
Doll's
opening
version.
track.
Yep,
I like keep forgetting about the sequence. Yeah, that's the opening track. And there's just this, but it's like tone knob on distortion pedal all the way down, tone knob on amp all the way down, like, you know, front pickup just like dirty, like really low bassy tone. And that was so fun to get. I think another kind of guitar tone that characterizes this album is I have this effects pedal called Hall of Fame, and there's a setting on it that's called 1. I don't know what it does. I think it's like a shattering glass effect, but it kind of does this like really high overtone, and it just almost sounds like it's like sparkling. And that's on a lot of the songs, and I think those two, kind of the really dirty and really sparkly, are really important. And there's Esme's bass playing on it is so good. Jack's drums, Harry's good. Like everyone just like laid it all out, and John blended it perfectly. Like I am so proud of how the record turned out. I was such a little, I don't know, annoying about the mixes. God, back and forth.
That happens though.
So particular. And then, but when it got to the point, I was like, yeah, like we did it. We did it. And yeah, the only thing, like I wouldn't change a thing. I would be more on top of it. I think I had a little bit of fear recording. I've been reading the Rick Rubin book, The Creative Act.
I have not gotten to that yet.
You would love it. You would love it.
Yeah.
I will say some of it, love you, Rick Rubin. Some of it is kind of giving like boy who does mushrooms for the first time kind of vibes, you know, like where it's all connected. And you're like, okay, yeah. But then there is some stuff that I'm like, oh my God, like this is so useful. And one of the things that he said was just that like the work has to, like in your mind, there's no parameter. Like you can imagine like the craziest guitar tone and there's no physical limitation to that existing because it's just in your mind. Whereas in the world, like there is like only the chimiest guitar tone you can get or the like most profound lyrics you can get. And the work has to exist in both. And I think like that just broke through for me. Like something about that. Like it's never going to sound exactly how it is in your head because there's literally no physical limitations.
Yeah, this kind of pursuit for perfection
that
we always get caught up in, which is the reason why you push it to mix number 10, version number 10, is kind of chasing that. And I can relate to that too. Definitely the earlier records, it was a lot of just like, I have this idea in my head and I'm just not getting it.
That block.
Yeah. But over time, I've just like kind of relinquished that.
Yeah.
And just been kind of happy with where I push it to. And
absolutely.
I just know I know when a song gets to a good point where it's like no feedback I can get from externally.
Yep.
Like if I send this to someone and they give like, I'm
doesn't
just
matter. I'm not even taking it. Yep.
Doesn't matter because you know, it's bigger than that.
Totally.
It's out of my control. And you know, if it's good music, it's good music.
If
also it's good art, it's good art.
It is. If it's good, it's good. And I find that like so much of my favorite like song or so many of my favorite songs, so much of my favorite art in general, it's not perfect. In fact, if it were, I'd be like, okay. Like you're moved by like, you know, limitations create style or whatever. Like I feel like that's so true. And I'm, you know, it's hard like being a new artist. And I don't know if you feel like this, like push and pull, but sometimes I'll be like, oh, I should push myself to like belt more because I don't do that much. But then also it's like, I have this breathiness to my voice. And by embracing that, that's made my style. Yeah. And I like, it's kind of this push and pull because I like embracing that like embracing limitations to make something that's really uniquely you. And I think artists who do that have a distinct kind of profile, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I like that you stumbled on this. I think, you know, you got to leave yourself room to grow.
Because and you want to push yourself always, but then it's like, where do I? When do I say, oh, this is how it's coming out of me versus I want to make it sound like this?
Yeah. I think there's kind of time and place, like, you know, we don't have the same voice, right? I have, you know, girls don't have a falsetto. At least that's what my choir teacher told me.
I don't know.
You know, I have falsetto, but
I believe it.
you know, like, you know, I have this nice falsetto, but I also kind of grew on this chest voice too. So like, where do I find the balance between, you know, do I sing a whole song in falsetto? Like, you know, one of my favorite artists, The Dream, like he's known for his falsetto. He has whole R&B records that are all in falsetto. Yeah. But then, you know, there's other, you know, like an Usher who has a great chest voice.
Right.
I think, you know, it's nice to kind of, you know, weave between the two. But when you're making an album that's really specific and has you kind of take him on a character.
Totally.
Right? There's some albums that you listen to and it feels more like a mixtape. I think that's when, you get kind of this flowing in between kind of styles.
Yeah.
But when you're really taking on a character, like David Bowie did this really well.
That's such a good way to put that, like the character versus a whole project. Yep. I like that.
I think it serves its purpose more effectively for that. So
yeah,
I think it just depends on, what you want the output to be. Is it a mixtape or is it this really? Or
is it a specific
an identity
style? Yeah. That's a perfect way to put that.
There's a song that you have on this album called Philosophy Test.
Yes.
And I think you are the first person I've ever heard, first artist I've ever heard have a line about Scantron tests.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so hard. Like I was like, yo, she really just dropped Scantron. I haven't heard the word Scantron in so long. I was so triggered. Like I went back.
Fill in the bubble.
I felt like I was in 5th grade, just like filling out the test, or back in college, like, I had just crammed for studying for this exam, and now I'm here like question 20, A, B, C, or D.
It's always A, B, C, or D.
A, B, C, or D. And I think that song is very on point with like the rest of the album, how you kind of pick these specific stories and times. But since this is like a song that really called to me, philosophy
Want the lowdown?
test. Was it? Were you really just thinking about? Did you write this during a philosophy test?
Well, so it's based on. So I went to De La Salle,
okay,
private Catholic.
Yep.
All the teachers there are great, love them, except
you ain't a brother.
Yeah, exactly. It was about him because he was a philosophy teacher there, and he literally gave true or false philosophy tests, which I thought was like the most rich with irony thing I'd ever heard. Like, and it wasn't just like facts about philosophers. It would be like, is being poured into form, or is form poured into being? True, false.
It's subjective.
Exactly. Which is like I felt like metaphor laden for a lot of like, I don't know, some of the nonsense that happens with religion. Be it, I do love a lot of the stuff that happens with religion too. But he was super sexist. He like I wasn't in this class, thank God, but he had like girls stand on chairs and guys say whose skirt was too short. Just creative shit, honestly. I was like, you have to be a whole different brand of sexist. And I felt so inspired to write that song because the first line is, I got an F on a true or false philosophy test. And just like kind of filling out the bubbles and like reflecting. And I literally like failed. And a lot of people would fail these because it's just all subjective stuff. And I remember like, because I was such a goody two-shoes in high school, like I was getting straight, like I was not failing tests. This was not like I was throwing a fit if I was failing a test. And I remember like just going into the bathroom and like kind of being like teared up and like, how are like what I'm saying, how is it any less valid than like what this old man has to say? And like, why is his view having so much more weight than mine? And that's kind of like what inspired the song. And then also how that translates into just like maybe a little bit romantic relationships with like maybe guys who present a little bit more like they've got their painted nails and like their beanies so they can say shit and get away with it, you know? And so that was kind of like where that all came together. And then we literally do Scantrons for philosophy tests, which is, isn't that insane?
That is insane.
I still like, I can't believe that was like even allowed, especially like De La Salle was like so progressive aside from him, like the cool Catholic, you know, people who are out there like doing, I don't know, like climate change activist, like that type of Catholic.
Gotcha,
and then they randomly have
this guy snuck his way in. Yeah.
Or grandfathered his way in. Probably. He's been there for a while.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of one of the more literal songs that I like had written, because a lot of the time I'll like pull on these emotions or like montage kind of these stories to create this grander like whatever. And that was like pretty specifically some things that happen.
Yeah, and I went to St. Thomas, which was really close to here too.
Yep.
So I mean, I get it. I had a philosophy college class because it was required.
Yeah, of course.
Now I don't remember if we had true or false questions on there.
I hope you didn't.
Oh my gosh, I kind of like wiped that from my brain.
Yeah.
But
Got the blinders on.
No, I get it, and you've been able to obviously move along from that.
Oh yeah.
It inspired that song in particular.
It did its thing. Served its purpose.
Served its purpose. What was the easiest song to write in this whole process?
Yeah.
And then what was the hardest song to write?
That's a great question. I think I want to say the hardest. I kind of have like two answers for this because there's a song called Garbage Truck, and I rewrote that like 4 times, like just lyrics. And then I kind of ran with this like metaphor of kind of seeing a relationship through like a Greek tragedy, but you're wandering around the streets of Paris and just having these like conversations, but in your head it's like you're at the fucking like battle, like 300 like you're in, like that's like where it was at, and how like there's this hubris of, he's like really caught up in his creative thing, and that's why I'm attracted to him, but I'm also like not because he's so caught up in that. So there's like I ended up going with something I really liked, which was comparing these conversations, just wandering around Paris, to like a Greek tragedy. And the bridge is like everything in context. Was it romance or a conquest? Like this whole thing. But thank you. But it ended up at a spot I really like. But then alternatively, the song Sinkhole, I like blasted it out. I wrote it in New York. Came to me so easy. Performing it, I could not get my voice to sound how I wanted to. It took me so many takes, and then takes when I like after we had done recorded. So those two were the hardest. The song Charlie, I had originally written the melody as a melody to or to kind of make the poem by Sylvia Plath, Mad Girl's Love Song, into a song. So I was like, that'd be a fun exercise. But I liked the melody so much that I switched it into my own song. And I left one line from the poem that's, I thought I made you up inside my head. I left that in the song as kind of an homage to it. But that one was the easiest. And it's just me and the guitar, so it flies by.
Naturally.
Yeah, just flew by.
Naturally.
Yeah.
So overall, it sounds like a lot of this record dates back to even like, did like high school?
Yeah, actually,
like,
yeah.
Even writing wise?
Yeah, writing wise, there's one song that I think we played at our very first show that we never put on a record.
Wow.
Which is interesting. I'd say majority of it is like the last 2 years. Then there's some like 1 or 2 that are like the song Boy Song. I don't know if you remember that one, but that one was like probably the 3rd or 4th song I ever wrote.
Yeah. So this is like a whole novel, Julia. Like you're gonna feel like when that day comes, when this drops, if it already dropped, it's gonna feel like literally turning the page, or not even beyond that. It's gonna feel like picking up a blank new book, and just like kind of
I hope so.
letting this one into the world.
I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, as you should be. And like, I mean, I think it's good to think about this, but like, what would you like the listener, like, what do you want its purpose to be? Like,
yeah,
the impact on people as they listen to it, and then they come see you perform it.
Right.
How do you hope that kind of translates?
That's a great question. Yeah, I guess the way I write things, I was really inspired by this. I don't know if you've heard the podcast Song Exploder.
Yeah. Oh, I love
so good. Yeah. So good. But Dan Wilson from Semisonic did an episode, and I don't know if you've listened to that one, but he mentions that when he writes songs, he likes to write almost 2 songs at once. So it's like Closing Time to him was about like a bar closing, you're leaving, but also like his daughter being born. Like it's closed, like you're being evicted out of the womb, like you're into the like sobriety of being out of the bar, or you're like into the sobriety of like a brand new world. And I think like every time I write a song, I want everyone to have like such an intimate and unique interpretation of it. 'Cause I write them about specific things in my life, but I also write them with like a greater feeling in mind. So I hope for people to really connect with them, and I hope it stirs something in them and it sticks in their head forever. That's what I want. And I love like going to shows where I know every word and I know like the transitions, and I'm bouncing around at First Avenue listening to like Wednesday play, and I'm just so moved. And I hope that for people, and I hope that it also inspires them to like make art, whatever level and medium that be. So yeah.
And you're putting your stamp on kind of this current era of the Minnesota scene as well. You know, we're getting towards the end of this, but I'd love to hear what keeps you excited about this space, this kind of ecosystem. Like your dad described it as like it reminds me of Seattle in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
What excites you about this scene currently?
That's a great question too. All great questions, by the way. It's been
really
a wonderful interview. One of my
great.
favorites, seriously.
A great conversation.
Yeah. I think, what are some things that excite me? I think everyone is really like truly supportive cross genres. And I think that's kind of unique, because I think, and maybe I haven't gone to a lot of local shows elsewhere, but local shows here, it's like you will have like a folk band and an R&B band and an indie rock band on the same bill. And I love that shit. Like so many, like, especially if it's a long bill and there's like all the bands have the exact same genre, like I'm bored, like mix it up. And here I really feel like there's like across genres, like everyone kind of intermingles. And I think in turn, there's like a cool influence there. Like everyone kind of influences each other. That's something I really like. And a lot of different like touring bands I've talked to have said that their favorite places to play are Minneapolis and Mexico City, which I thought was really cool. Like we just get down Mexico City, like in Minneapolis, like we're the ones getting down the hardest. But yeah, I think like it's such a supportive scene. There's influences that are like being drawn all over the place, and it's small enough to like kind of incubate this growth, but it's also not too small that it like suffocates it. And I think it's that beautiful sweet spot of support and growth. Yeah, I love the scene, and I'm so grateful for everything it's done for me, and hopefully we give back something to it also.
Absolutely. Like I hope that this can be the springboard for like what's next, because you know I love Prince, you know, RP, but you know we gotta keep it pushing, you know.
We gotta keep it
like,
pushing.
That's what he would want. That's what you know, the Jimmy Jams and so many other names. You know, you walk at First Ave. I was already there last night, you know, and you see the stars on the outside. And you bring up a good point. Like, yeah, we do have just a melting pot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And you can get them all in the same room in one night.
Yeah.
And you really, I can vouch. You can't find that anywhere else. Like, unless it's like, I was in Austin for South by Southwest.
Oh, right. Like festival.
That's
situation.
like, yeah, festival situations. Yeah. But like when everything else is gone, it's just the people of that city, you know, what is it like? So,
right.
No, it's definitely unique and something, you know, we got to hold near and dear and continue
Absolutely.
to keep pushing. So
keep pushing.
Keep pushing. Well, Julia, this has been a great conversation.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah, look forward to this record and everything else. And yeah, everyone else outside,
Bye.
Peace out. Thanks for tuning in.